Time to meet everyone we can't talk to. No Firekeeper, no Shrine Handmaiden, and worst of all, no Andre. Great, this is going to be fun, isn't it? First off, let's talk about our base problems. Because we can't interact with Firelink NPCs, we cannot level up, upgrade weapons, or even buy supplies. So not only are souls 100% useless in this run, it makes this run much harder than even an SL1. Without talking, we can't even get the Dragon Slayer axe, which is one of the best weapons for a no upgrade run. It's clear that, to beat this run, we will have to get creative with our weapon choices, as well as increase our skill levels. Additionally, because we cannot upgrade or allot Estus, plus the fact most of our spells are locked behind NPCs like Orbeck, meaning using any spells during this run is effectively impossible, forcing us to use melee throughout the run. But if I let any of those restrictions stop me, I wouldn't be a challenge runner, now would I? Luckily, because of the nature of this challenge, the early bosses, such as Vort, aren't going to be difficult. However, the further we get in this challenge, the more the gap between our damage and the boss's health will grow. So enjoy the easy kills for now, because it won't last long. Without the banner, we cannot proceed. Luckily, you can just kill her for the banner. No talking required. Well, since we are here, it couldn't hurt to try against the Dancer. After all, our damage isn't going to get much better, so might as well see what we're going to have to deal with. Oh, it's gonna be one of those types of runs, huh? After learning that violence is the answer when you can't talk, I run through the Undead Settlement, ignoring just about everything. Although, I do pick up an Undead Bone Shard. Luckily, we can still upgrade what flasks we have using this. Considering you can just burn it at a bonfire, no talking required. The further we get into this challenge, the more the boss's health will grow compared to our low damage. So to combat this, we are going to be picking up weapons that deal status effect damages, namely Bleed and Frost. The first one I pick up is the Irithyll Straightsword. However, since I started as Warrior, I won't be able to use this until I pick up the Hunter's Ring. While I could have chosen a class like Mercenary to be able to use it earlier, I have my reasons for sticking with Warrior as our starting class. And since the Hunter's Ring is just before the Twin Princes, this sword is going to be sitting in my backpack for a long time. I sacrificed these poor souls to gravity in hopes it might just spare me later, and then I head towards our next boss, the Crystal Sage. This fight is supposed to be easy, although for some reason I couldn't help but mess up at every conceivable point. Why won't I remember how to dodge? While this does lead to some closer than I'd like to admit moments, I managed to clutch up and not play like I was blindfolded, defeating the Crystal Sage with no healing to spare. Our next stop is the DLC. There's some items in there that would help this run go smoother. Alright, we can't talk to Gale, so no access to the DLC. While there is a way to access the DLC, despite this, the setup required is much farther down the line, so that's not really an option. Heading into the cathedral, we get our first damage upgrade, the Lloyd's Sword Ring, increasing our damage at full health by 10%, which is really helpful. Hey, Kirk, I will make sure you regret that. The deacons proceed as normal. Simply kill the little ones and then confront the main body. Hit him enough times and eventually... Wait, what? Okay, that was surely a fluke. To prevent that from happening again, equip the Lord's Sword Ring and buff our Estus Flask with the Bone Shards. Second try goes much better. However, somehow, I'm still getting hit. Holy, are deacons actually difficult in this run? Surely not. Instead of pondering why I suck at this game, I go through the swamp, lighting fires and picking up any items that could possibly help me. although there aren't many of those. And even if we can't quick-step through the swamp, rolling gets the job done just fine, and we are ready to try the Abyss Watchers. While they are the first Lord of Cinder, I've fought them many times. The first phase switches between giving the Abyss Watchers severe back pain and an over-glorified game of keep away. In the second phase, you are still giving the Abyss Watchers back pain, except everything is now on fire, and he acts like he has just drunk 3 different energy drinks and just won't stay still. Things were going really well until I got overconfident and died, just as the health bar was so close. No matter, I just have to play less cocky. And after relearning to never turn your back on an Abyss Watcher, after giving him more back pain and yet another close call, and after enough backsteps to permanently cripple someone, the Abyss Watchers go down. And for my efforts, I get a lot of souls. If only they weren't absolutely useless. I grab our next Undead Bone Shard and head down to our favorite skeleton. Wolnir is as normal. Although, we have lower damage than normal, just hit his bracelets and he will die. Hey, Wolnir. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me get that last bracelet. Wolnir. Oh, Wolnir, let down your hand, or I'll tell Cassandra what you do on Fridays. That's what I thought. The Sullivan Beasts are quite annoying enemies to fight against. However, they drop a usable ring that is also useful, although you have to win to get it. No matter, the attack patterns are simple and repetitive, and even if it takes longer than usual, I still claim my reward, the Pontiff Ride Eye Ring. Oh, right, we haven't done Deacons yet. I make a quick stop to upgrade my flask, and then I head back to Dancer, because this is, ironically enough, a preferable fight compared to the Deacons. The biggest problem is that the Dancer's diverse moveset. Whenever the fight drags on long enough, she will pull out combos that you don't see often, which is interesting but also equally annoying. Ultimately, while I do get close, I'd prefer to try and get something that will help make Dancer more possible. So, I go back to Deacons. And it seems that taking a break from Deacons to fight against other bosses was exactly what I needed. I managed to shake off whatever curse I had that was preventing me from playing like a competent person, and I killed Deacons with minimal issues. Now we can finally enter Irithyll. You know, normally I record 2 audio tracks, with the first being the game audio and the second being my reactions at the time. Although most of it gets removed during the voiceovers. However, to commit to the theme of the run, I did not record any of my live reactions to make it a true no-talk run, which was 100% unnecessary, but I just thought it would be funny to do, and I kinda wanted to talk about it. Yeah, that's about all. With that unnecessary tangent over, I make my way through the dungeon. Nothing unusual, even if the jailers reduce my max HP. I already have such low health, it barely matters. I eventually get down to the bridge, and near the end, I see rubble in my way. So, I go to the left to avoid it, but end up dodging off the cliff, plummeting to my death. No matter. I doubt that'll be the last time I die to gravity. After wiping my memory of what just happened, I confront Yorm. The only thing to note here is that if we get hit at any moment, we die. So we have to no-hit Yorm. Luckily, we have the Storm Ruler, so winning isn't difficult. First try. And the Storm Ruler is also usable in this run. The weapon art has decent range on it, allowing you to damage things safely. However, the damage on it sucks. Like, objectively so. However, this has given me a unique idea for Dancer. You see, the Dancer is actually active before you ever enter her arena. So theoretically, you could hit her with the Storm Ruler, killing her without a fight. However, the Storm Ruler doesn't have enough range to hit the Dancer, apparently. does not exactly surprise me, but I had to check if it worked or not. I also used the greatsword as a regular weapon, and I'm not exactly impressed with the results. Well, time to stop getting sidetracked and get back to my original plan. Down at the bottom of the profane capital in this poison swamp are 3 hand thingies. I think they're called monstrosities of sin, but I call them the hand thingies. And one of them drops something that will be very useful for this run. The problem being, it has been at least a year since I last fought one of these things. You don't really encounter them on a normal route, unless you specifically go out of your way to mess with them. Luckily, their moveset is seemingly simple to dodge, so after a long fight, I claim my reward. Eleonora. This axe has a high base damage, but the most useful thing is its weapon art that applies 2 different effects. The first is that it adds passive bleed buildup to your weapon. The second is that you heal 15 HP on each hit. Let me show you what I mean. While the Dancer is resistant to bleed, using this weapon you can proc it every so often. The healing on each hit is kind of useless though, while the base damage of the weapon is definitely improved compared to our axe. It has one glaring weakness. The weapon art takes 5 business days to actually apply, consumes most of your stamina bar. Sir, I decided our best course of action is just to fight against Pontiff. Oh, it's gonna be one of those days, huh? Okay, Pontiff, have it your way. By parrying Pontiff, you can deal a ton of damage to him. However, do you see that? Even though I successfully parried Pontiff, I still took some chip damage. This is a sign of an imperfect parry. While it is within the time to get a riposte, it's not timed well enough to get iframes from the parry itself. The problem here being, I don't have enough healing to deal with each unsuccessful parry, nor do I have the patience for it. Well, screw it. It's Yamfa time. Jump on top of this railing here. By running forward and quickly flicking back, you can trigger Death Cam without needing Teardrop, allowing you to skip Pontiff entirely. However, there's an issue. This seems to be another controller-specific glitch. I don't think you can do it on keyboard and mouse. Trust me, I have been trying for longer than I care to admit. Moving onwards, no matter. What about Dancer? Well, there is a way to easily kill the Dancer. Simply stand right about here and enter the boss room before rapidly spamming backstep. This will freeze the Dancer's AI. All you have to do is pull out your bow and shoot her to death for an easy Dancer kill. Or at least, in a normal run you could. We don't have nearly enough ammunition to kill the Dancer, and the only way to get more arrows is by buying some from the Shrine Handmaiden. And to do that, you have to talk to her, obviously, so much for that plan. Well, there is one thing that can increase our odds, but it won't help much. While there's no reason to kill the demon here, I can't leave Sigurd to die. So after ensuring his safety, even if I can't talk to him, I head upwards and claim my rewards. Flynn's ring and the Chloranthy ring. While the upgrade is small, it still gives me a much needed boost to my power. The Dancer is tricky, and sometimes hard to predict, but after so many attempts at her, I've learned a lot, and I start doing better. I dodge gracefully and play patiently. And finally, after hours of attempts, I clutch up. Almost hitlessing Dancer, although I get overconfident and get hit right before she dies. No matter, we have claimed victory against the Dancer. All things considered, this talkless run is going alright so far. The bosses have been getting more annoying, but I'm sure I'll be able to beat this. Probably. In any case, there's only one item in the entirety of Lothric that interests me, the Knight's Ring. It increases our strength by 5 points, giving us more damage and allowing us to one-hand the Eleonora, if need be, as well as access to more weapons. And after some deaths to Dragon Slayer, as well as a close attempt, I decide we should go teach Pontiff a well-deserved lesson. But the better damage does not fix our overarching problem, the bad parrying shield. So I go back to the Undead Settlement to pick up a familiar friend, the small lever shield. And my goodness, it is so much better. With this, I don't take that chip damage as often, increasing the amount of times I can successfully parry Pontiff. Although, I still die quite a few times. You know, I wonder what would happen if I got something even better for parrying. I head to the sewers to grab a special weapon, the Castus. However, there does come a risk to using it. Because of how fast it is, you don't have a lot of iframes or damage reduction during the parry. However, because the parry is almost instant with no windup, if you have a lot of skill, you can reactively parry the bosses, giving you more opportunities to successfully parry the boss. And with enough practice, fighting Pontiff is going to look kinda like this. That was oddly fun. Although, I have a sneaking suspicion that feeling is not going to last long. After all, our next boss is a slug with aimbot. Okay, you know what? Surely it won't be that bad, right? Oh, right. I forgot Aldrich has Dark Souls 2 hitboxes. Here's a quick replay, because apparently the handle does as much damage as the magic blade for some reason. Let's talk about the horrible boss that is Aldrich. The first is the questionable hitboxes, pretty self-explanatory. However, the worst is probably the variety of magic attacks that can quickly kill you, especially when you don't have much HP. Then there's the tracking arrow rain that can be comboed with various magical attacks, leaving you with nowhere to go. Okay, Aldrich, you think you're tough? I have a surprise for you. It's Yamfa time. Stand exactly here near the fog wall, then enter and spam backstep. It may take you a couple tries to get the positioning perfect, but if you stay persistent, you can freeze Aldrich's AI. While we can't use a bow to kill him because we don't have enough arrows, this glitch in particular can be done without needing to use a bow. Why you can move around and hit Aldrich with your weapon and not Dancer is beyond me, but I've learned well enough not to question these sorts of things. You deserve that, Aldrich, let's be honest. Well, we are back to the Dragon Slayer, and guess what? He is still a coward who hides behind his shield. But why is he exactly difficult? Besides the shield hugging that annoys me endlessly. The problem here is entirely in the second phase. I'm not really afraid of his first phase attacks, you can normally dodge them with little issues. Although, if you do get hit, you will die. The issue is actually the dragons that shoot annoying projectiles, lasers, and bombs during the second phase. You have to pay attention to them while also keeping an eye on the Dragon Slayer armor. To do this, you need to pay attention to sound cues as well as making quick glances to see what type of attack each dragon is doing. So you have to look at opposite sides of the arena while keeping it brief so you don't get killed by the actual boss on the ground. Trying to juggle the fight with this method requires a lot of patience and skill. Eventually, I decided on a more aggressive approach to the second phase, where instead of taking my eyes off the Dragon Slayer, I just panic roll away when I hear the sound cues. Which sometimes didn't help me as much as I thought it would, but with enough persistence, I eventually defeat the Dragon Slayer. Thanks for watching my suffering thus far. As a small channel, it takes a while to make these videos, So if you like, subscribe, or even watch some of my other videos, it helps my channel grow and allows me to make even better videos. What you do matters. And with that, back to the video. After making my way to the Twin Princes, I quickly realized that this is going to be difficult. As for any methods of making this fight a joke, the only glitch I could perform to make this easier is an AI freeze in the second phase transition. However, it requires a bow to even capitalize on that glitch, and without arrows, our options are but one: to push onwards using my own skill. No matter, the Twin Princes can be bled, and if it bleeds, we can kill it. By using the reinforced club with its innate bleed and high poise damage, we can put some serious damage onto the Twin Princes. Although it requires both skill and patience to defeat the Twin Princes, a successful attempt will look something like this. With that, only one remains. We've come quite a long way, so I can't give up now. Now, for some reason, people think you have to talk to the Firekeeper to be transported to the final area. However, you can just ignore her entirely and just go up to the bonfire with the prompt, kneel. It's time for the finale. Fighting against the Soul of Cinder, one thing becomes painfully clear. My damage sucks. Like, horrendously so. If we average out our damage at 90 damage a hit, it will take 73 hits to reach phase 2, and an additional 47 to win the fight, while the Soul of Cinder needs to land only 5 successful hits, assuming I have time to heal between hits, and assuming he uses attacks that don't one-shot, which a lot of them do. With that, it's clear that I need to improve our damage somehow, so I grabbed the Hunter's Ring so I can use the Irithyll Straight Sword for the frost effect. However, in practice, it works a different way entirely. Even with the frost proc dealing 11% of the boss's max HP, the amount of hits it takes for it to occur is massive, to the degree that we would actually be doing more damage using the club's better initial damage and getting the very occasional bleed effect. So if frost won't help me, what about glitches? Well, the only useful glitch involves a great bow. However, since we don't have the stats or the ammunition, that isn't possible, and to my knowledge, there isn't any other glitch that could help me, leaving the only option is to use my skill to overcome this obstacle. However, there is one thing I can do to improve my damage. I equip the Flynn's Ring, which improves damage the lower equip load you are at. The downside being, because I have no armor on now, the amount of attacks that can one-shot me has also increased. But I think the reward outweighs the risk. As far as the fight itself goes, the Soul of Cinder has a very broad moveset, but let's go over the two biggest problems for me. The first being the curved sword moveset. There's little good opportunities to actually punish him during that phase. The other is during the spear moveset. While the attacks themselves are probably the easiest to dodge, second only to the mage moveset, the problem is the healing move that the Soul of Cinder does. If he at any moment decides to do that, it will reset at least 1 minute's worth of damage depending on the phase. If you couple that with the slow burn of the curved sword moveset, then he can easily make you waste 2 minutes of your time. While there is a way to stop his healing, the first being just staggering him, although it is a little too inconsistent to actually rely on it. The best method is the dual charm, which if thrown will stop the healing effect. However, since we cannot talk to the Shrine Handmaiden, that isn't a viable option. Luckily, the healing move isn't common. What is common about it, however, is the amount of irritation it brings when he uses it. Here's a fun fact. The Soul of Cinder alone took about 30% of the entire duration of this run. But after hours of attempts and countless deaths, I do two things to ensure my victory. The first is take a nap. The second is change how I approach the second phase. Instead of confronting every attack head-on, I instead stay at a medium range and intentionally aggro attacks that I can punish. While this does make the second phase take longer, it's better than another 5 hours of attempts at Soul of Cinder. And with that, my victory is sealed. Dark Souls 3 beaten without talking. If you enjoyed, consider joining my Discord, the link is in the description. And consider watching some of my other videos, I promise, they're just as good as this one. With that, have a good day, and don't you dare go hollow.
There's an interesting phenomenon a lot of us have observed where the smaller something is, the more aggressive it tends to be. At least in two cases that I can think of, like with dogs. Like, small dogs oftentimes go ballistic like with dogs. Like, small dogs oftentimes go ballistic like Donnie from the Wild Thornberries and just like trying to attack bigger animals or like get really loud like Chihuahuas are notorious for it. But we can observe that same behavior in small men. Short man syndrome. I think probably the best example of that is Bagel Boss. I know that's a deep cut at this point because it happened quite a few years ago. That's like referencing season 1 of the internet at this point with how fast things move, but I think a lot of you remember the Bagel Boss where he freaked out, you know, it started going crazy and reckless all because he thought someone was making fun of his height. And short man syndrome is something that's been discussed quite a bit. As a short man, I can tell you with confidence, it's not all of us. We don't all have that trait. But the reason I bring that up is because of a body cam I watched today, where someone who had no right talking the shit they were talking tried it on an officer, and they got a big attitude adjustment.
What's up, man?
What's up?
What's up? What car you in?
I ain't in any of these
Let's
cars.
go, then you gotta get out, let's go.
Nah, I don't gotta go nowhere.
You live here?
I don't got, yeah, I live here. You don't got,
Okay, what's
what
your
you
address?
walking up on me like that for? What's up?
What's your address?
Take that vest off. Come on,
Take that vest off for
come on. Take that vest off, you know. Come on, take that shit off. Let's get it.
All right,
Let's get it, man. What's up? What's up?
Do me a
Take
favor,
that
man.
shit off. Take that shit off. Laugh like you're not a bitch.
Do me a favor,
Like
sit
you're
down.
not a bitch. Take that shit off.
This guy is not looking like a fighter. He looks like when you set the slider as far to the left on slim as you can during the Oblivion character creator. He is as skinny as my wiener. He's got the body of like 3 french fries loosely held together. He's built like a cigarette. Yet he's out here talking and immediately sounds like looking to throw hands with the officer, telling him to take the vest off, telling him, let's go, bitch. Like, he's talking reckless right now. He thought he was still on Summoner's Rift right here talking to faceless teammates in League of Legends, but it doesn't really work like that here.
Come on, knock, take that shit off. Let's get it.
Where do you live?
Your partner here like he's gonna do something. You ain't gonna do shit.
Where do you live, man?
I live right here. There ain't nothing about
What's
it.
your address?
Do something about it.
Huh?
How about that? Take your shit off and do something about it. You like I won't.
Like you what? Like you want what?
Honestly, the officer was pretty patient here. He's kind of treating it like a joke up till this point. He even looks at the other officer like, can you believe this shit? Because look at the difference here. The officer has like 6 inches on him maybe, and at least like 60 pounds. Like, it wouldn't be a fight. That would be a slaughter. Plus, the douchebag has a huge debuff because his TikTok broccoli hair is in his eyes. I don't even think he can clearly see the officer right now. But he's trying to put on this big song and dance for his friends that he's like some, you know, colossal tough guy here, and it is just shameful.
I ain't gonna say nothing on that camera.
What
So
are you
I'm
gonna
saying,
do?
take
What are
that
you
off.
gonna do? What are you
Take it
gonna
off. Let me see.
Okay,
Take
take
it off.
out
Let me
the
see.
seat.
Yeah.
Let me get your ID.
You ain't gonna get shit.
Okay.
Take it off and you see. Well, what you laughing for? I'm writing your shit.
Where's-
Take it off.
Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back. Stop resisting. Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back. I'm a minor.
It was an interesting strategy post-takedown where he tried to tell the officer he's a minor. He's 20 years old. But that technique right there is actually something I've theory crafted on if I was to ever be in like a dire situation. Like, let's say someone's got me cornered and they're looking to do harm. I have toyed with the notion of trying to say like, stop, please don't, I'm only 12. Now, it'd be a hard sell in my case because of the tattoos and the beard, but I have the height of a 12-year-old, so I do think there is a chance. But in this case, when he said that, I really did think, oh, he actually might just be a kid, but he's not. He's 20 years old. So he was really just desperately trying to go into like the bag of tricks to try anything to wiggle his way out of this one. It didn't work. Also, I love the line that he gave right before he got the, you know, the fucking pile driver there. He said, I'm up in your shit, which is very reminiscent of one of my favorite lines in a Freak Out where a cyclist went up to a guy, like a really creepy guy who was filming a woman's ass, and he was like blocking the camera, and he said, and I'll never forget, doesn't matter who the fuck I am, I'm up in your shit, so what the fuck? It had that same DNA. And I really appreciate that. While I might not like this guy's attitude here about talking all tough about how he's gonna like throw down with this officer who would absolutely eat him, break him in half like a Kit Kat bar, I do like that he tried that line.
So why'd you get in my face? Were you gonna hit me? Huh? So why'd you get in my face then? I told you stop balling up your fist, right? Okay, so why'd you get in my face? All right, stand up. Hey, what you doing there? Back up. Hey, back up.
Back up, back up.
You do that, back up.
Now.
You do that, bro.
Back up. It's no big deal.
Player 2 just plugged in the controller and he's about to put on quite a show here watching his brother get arrested. Now, you'll love to see how quickly his tune changed after being taken down. He went from like, take that vest off, let's see it, bitch. Let me see what you're made of, bitch. Like, what's going on with that? Come on, man. Like, take the vest off. I'm not gonna say it on camera, bitch. And now he's on the ground. He's like, sir, I'm so sorry. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Sir, I'm so sorry. Like, he's now just trying, like, to be respectful as if he wasn't just actually 2 seconds ago talking some reckless shit.
Help, where you going?
It's all good. I ain't doing nothing. No, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal.
Sit down.
Joey! It's no big deal. It's no big deal. I ain't do nothing.
But you're helping. Joey! What the fuck? You let the man go to jail?
Oh my god, those voice cracks. The actual fucking, like, bird screeching of his yelling. Like the kind of shit that you hear in Gamer Rage compilations where they get, like, excited and then the voice breaks. Actual puberty shit here. But I'm pretty sure he's also, like, the same age as his brother.
I didn't have time to work on him.
I didn't do nothing, bro.
You were about to hit me, dude.
I was not about to.
So why'd you ball your fist and get in my face?
Because, dude, you're running up on me. Bro.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
I'm sorry. I was just hyped up, too.
Hey, you a bitch, stand over there right now. He's a bitch, bro. You bitch me, bro. You bitch me.
So I watched it back a couple times. the guy was balling up his fists a few times, and then right before the takedown, he does get, like, right up in that man's shit. Like, he was all up in there like he was fucking pooping the colon. So, like, he does get close. The officer may have perceived that as, like, it's about to get aggressive, so he just immediately put the kibosh on that, ragdolling this goober. I also love how the brother has almost the same attitude and the same, like, NPC dialogue lines where he just keeps calling him, like, a bitch. Like, it's incredible how similar they are. Like, they're wearing the same shirt, too, I'm almost positive.
I told you several chances. I said, hey, stop balling your fist. Chill out. All right, I accept your apology, but we didn't have to take it to this level, man.
I know. I'm sorry.
Like-
I was just hyped up.
It's like 15 of you guys gonna let you punch me in the face. What do you think I am, a punching bag? Well, you look like you were gonna hit me.
I know, and I apologize.
All right, what's all the balling up your fist?
There's a situation going on, sir. Honestly, I apologize.
He's now de-aggroed the douchebag here, so now he's all apologetic. Look, I was just hyped up, you know. I was kind of feeling myself. I'm sorry. You like walked up on me and I thought it was time to start, you know, doing some of this at you. Like, I don't know. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, that's his new, like, go-to line now. And it doesn't really help him out that much.
You know, you screwed up. Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. I was acting big and tough.
No.
I got
After the juvenile assessment center, what's going to happen is he's going to get taken down there. We're going to process him, and then.
Why
we're gonna-
juvenile?
How old is he?
20.
He's 20 years old? Someone over there said he was 16. If he's 20, then he's going down to county jail. All right.
Now that he's had his whole come to Jesus moment, he just keeps profusely apologizing, like, oh, I don't know what came over me, officer. I was acting all big and tough. It's ridiculous. I feel so silly. I feel so ashamed. I'm sorry. And he keeps, like, going down that path. It doesn't stop him from getting arrested, but everything cools down between him and the officers. And then they talk to the father here. And by the way, the father is like the sole reason his brother also didn't get into some trouble here. Like, the father was able to, like, get his brother inside and try and, like, calm everything down. And now they're talking to the dad, saying, like, he's going to be going to, like, the juvenile holding facility or whatever. And the dad's like, juvenile? What? He's 20. So they're like, oh, okay, well then, yeah, he's just going to jail.
About 2 feet.
Just hooting and hollering, yelling and screaming?
Yeah, just talking shit. That's all.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I regret it. Trust me, I regret it.
All right.
Sure, you know.
So he did get charged with assaulting a police officer as well as concealing a weapon, brass knuckles. I don't know where he was hiding that on his person there. He must have had that in his prison wallet, because he did get patted down, and I guess they just missed the brass knuckles, so that got slapped on there. I don't really know about that assaulting an officer charge, because he didn't do that, except for maybe like sonic-based attacks from his brother's voice-cracking screeches. Maybe like the wailing from his brother you could take as like an assault on the senses, but this guy didn't really do that. He got stopped before it ever got to that point. So I don't really know how that charge works in this case, but regardless, that's what he was facing. This was back in like 2022, so it's a few years old now, but I still wanted to share this because I just found that to be so interesting to see. That's really about it. See ya.
Fifth alarm. Working structure. Fifth alarm. Working structure fire. 7741 Liberty Road Drive.
It's 9 a.m. on May 18th, 2024. Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina wake up to the smell and sight of black smoke billowing up into the sky. The source: a massive 7-story apartment complex home to 239 luxury units, or at least what should have been luxury units. At the time, the structure was still under construction, meaning that thankfully no residents were living there. But this in and of itself presented 2 major problems. The first was that, in its current state, the top 5 floors were primarily just the bones of the structure, made almost entirely of wood and insulation, making the building as a whole extremely flammable. Meaning that, although the fire had started out relatively small, it was quickly going to consume the entire complex if it wasn't put out quickly. Which brings us to the second and even more glaring problem. The building was actively under construction when the fire started, and that morning 17 construction workers had clocked in, all of whom were now in grave danger. And by the time the firefighters arrived on the scene, the situation was already dire. And so firefighters rushed in, finding a large group of the employees and leading them out to safety. Though when they made it outside, they made the horrifying realization that they had only found 15 of them. Somewhere within that labyrinth of burning wooden walls, 2 men were left behind, trapped and calling out to anyone who might hear them. And these pleas weren't just being made to those on the scene, as in the following minutes, one of the trapped men, 30-year-old DeMonte Sherrill, would take out his phone, open up Facebook, and go live, revealing the horrifying reality that both he and his friend had found themselves in.
Somebody send help. We're in South Park. Help!
Today, we're going to be showing our friends the basics of the internet, and we thought you might want to come along.
You gotta do it now.
If you own a computer, here's how to get the most out of it. Watch this, watch this, watch this.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now. At work, the building on fire, and I can't get out.
The stream showed DeMonte Sherrill and his friend Reuben Holmes somewhere deep within the prospective apartment complex, and though the fire hadn't yet reached them, the smoke certainly had, blanketing them in a thick, impenetrable fog, not only making breathing extremely difficult, but also making it nearly impossible for rescuers to see them.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us. We're gonna have to stand out here and see. The building on fire, I'm trapped inside, me and my man.
This was likely one of the reasons why DeMonte chose to start this livestream, hopeful that it could show rescuers exactly where they were. But based on the footage, their positioning was far from ideal. They were on the second highest floor, floor 6, which had only one access point, a single stairway that was on the complete opposite side of the building. And based on their testimony in the footage, something had clearly blocked their path to that one remaining exit, meaning that the only other way out would be to jump. Though at 6 stories in the air, and falling into what would likely be the heart of the fire, this would have meant certain death. There was quite literally nowhere for them to go. Rescue was their only hope.
Yo, this building is on fire. I'm at work. Somebody send help. We're at South Park.
Seemingly realizing this, DeMonte began to grow more desperate, yelling out into the void of smoke, while Reuben can be seen in the background waving his phone flashlight, with both men doing anything they could to help rescuers find them. Before... the stream abruptly ends. Rescuers were aware of the unfolding situation on the 6th story. They first tried to reach the men by using a massive crane with a basket attached, which can actually be seen in DeMonte's livestream. Though in it, you can see that it's also facing the complete wrong direction, as the smoke was just that impenetrable. However, at one point, it's believed that the crane operator did actually see these men, but the blaze was just too extreme, leading to the operator himself having to be rescued. This left only one real option for saving DeMonte and Reuben. They were going to have to go in after them. And so they climbed that stairway up to floor 6 and started their trek to the opposite end of the structure. Though before they could even make it halfway, the rescuers were relegated to a slow crawl as the inferno around them raged more and more intensely, and the smoke grew thicker and thicker. Though that's when they began to hear screaming. Somewhere lost in that maze, Ruben and DeMonte were yelling as loud as they could for help. This sound was a sign that they were getting close, though just then rescuers would be met with another sound.
All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure per command. All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure.
Command all companies, this will be defensive at this time. We'll be ready for this side to collapse. Everybody get out of the collapse zone. Confirming you are coming out, but you're not out of the building.
With the order being made for all of them to evacuate, as by this point, the structure was engulfed in flames, and a collapse was imminent. The firefighters tried to call out to the two in one last attempt to guide them towards rescue, but they never came. In fact, at that point, the structure fell eerily silent. They would leave that structure without DeMonte or Ruben, and minutes later, the fire consumed the entire building, with the temperature inside reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Before
it collapsed,
it would eventually topple to the ground. And inside, DeMonte and Ruben would become the sole fatalities of this catastrophe.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now. At work, the building on fire, and I can't get out. It's getting harder and harder for them to see.
Knowing how the story ends would make this live stream difficult for anyone to watch. But what I find most upsetting about it is that the majority of those who initially watched this were his own friends and family that followed him on Facebook, with these viewers including his own mother. And a lot of them probably had no idea he even worked this job, as he had just been hired that week. His brother had also caught the stream as it was happening and actually rushed over to the scene where he pleaded with the firefighters to watch the footage. But despite doing the best they could, there was just too much working against them to save DeMonte and Ruben. Following an investigation into the fire, it was discovered that the crew was using an organic foam insulation, which was known to be extremely flammable and produce thick black smoke, and this became deadly when the machine used to spray that insulation caught fire, sending the whole building up in flames, where they had yet to install any sort of smoke detector or alarm system to alert the crew of a fire. Making matters worse, there had been a temporary set of stairs made right where the two men had been trapped, but that stairwell had just been removed in order to make way for the permanent set of stairs. Because of this and a myriad of other issues, the companies involved with this construction were forced to pay a fine of $50,000 and are currently being sued by the families of both victims. But regardless of the outcome, nothing will ever make up for the loss of DeMonte Sherrill and Ruben Holmes. Things were getting concerning. Johnny Cashman spoke to his family nearly every single day, but now, on the 6th day without receiving any communication from him, they knew that something was wrong. Johnny lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, hundreds of miles away from his home in Maine, and so, being unable to check on him themselves, they called police in the area and requested a welfare check. Police entered Johnny's apartment on the 19th of April, 2022, and hours later, they would call his parents with the news that they had found their son dead on the floor. According to the officers, Johnny had experienced some sort of medical event that led to GI bleeding that ultimately claimed his life. But this made no sense to Johnny's family. He was only 38 years old and had just been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior. It was so out of the blue, in fact, that they even asked if there were any signs of a struggle or if there was any evidence that he may have taken his own life. But they were assured that there was no trauma, no drugs, and nothing suspicious found on the scene. And that, as shocking as it was, his cause of death was entirely natural, and had likely just been spurred on by drinking and tobacco use, with the only solace being that Johnny didn't suffer, as they stated that he had died instantly. Because of this, no autopsy was performed, as the case seemed as straightforward as it gets, and despite his family questioning if they should get their own autopsy, they were told by officers that it wouldn't be necessary. And so, Johnny's body was cremated and sent back to Maine, in what seemed to be the end of Johnny Cashman's story. 10 days after Johnny's body was discovered, his ex-girlfriend and her mother made their way back to his apartment in order to retrieve some of her belongings. She knew that re-entering the space was going to be difficult, but ultimately there was no way she could have prepared for what was waiting for her inside. There was blood everywhere. It was pooled in the bathrooms, wiped on doors, spread all over the living space, and was even found on a chair and a banister. But the most horrifying part of it all was the walls. They were covered in splattered blood, which revealed long streaking handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of death was deemed natural, what they found in that apartment seemed anything but. Traumatized by what they were witnessing, the pair snapped multiple photos of the bloodshed and ran out of the unit, directly into Johnny's neighbor. This neighbor revealed that they believed something far worse than a medical emergency had happened to Johnny, as they had a security camera mounted to their door which faced Johnny's unit, and on the day of his passing, it captured something incredibly disturbing. The footage shows Johnny making his way up the flight of stairs leading to his apartment at around 3:03 p.m. Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, though it is noteworthy that he was holding an empty glass, perhaps insinuating that he had been drinking. But this doesn't seem to impair his movements much at all, as he punches in the code and enters his home, just as he did every other day. But moments later, something happens inside that unit, and while it goes unseen, it doesn't go unheard.
Yo, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing, man? Stop. 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 Stop.
The audio seems to depict a man yelling, asking repeatedly, "What are you doing?" and begging for something to stop. On top of this, you can also hear loud thuds and banging, almost as if things were falling over inside, or there was some sort of physical altercation, before the unit then goes quiet just a few seconds later. It was unclear if this voice was Johnny's, or perhaps someone else who had been inside the unit, but regardless, one thing was apparent from this audio. There was someone else in that apartment, despite the fact that Johnny lived alone. And just 7 minutes later, this unseen person would emerge. This clearly wasn't Johnny, and after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind. Turning around and walking back up the stairs before fiddling with the door handle, touching it only with his sleeve, like he was wiping off his fingerprints. He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired, before he composes himself and walks out of the building. But the footage wasn't quite finished yet. Just 1 minute later, you can hear Johnny shouting for help from inside the apartment, to which moments after, he stops, and no further sound or activity would come from Johnny's unit until police arrived 5 days later. The footage and the scene at the apartment seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death. The blood all over made it obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown man who was clearly distraught and wiping off his fingerprints, as well as the sound of the apparent struggle inside, seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family. But even with this footage, police still believed that Johnny's death was due to a medical emergency, as they quickly changed their initial story, saying that the blood spread was due to uncontrollable vomiting, and that Johnny had in fact likely suffered, at least for a short while. But this medical emergency wasn't elaborated on, as they didn't truly know what caused it, as no autopsy was ever performed, nor could one ever be performed, as by this point, Johnny was already cremated, and cremated because of the officer's initial statements. So if Johnny had actually been murdered, which the footage does seem to suggest, there was now virtually no way to prove it. And what makes this even more frustrating is that law enforcement already had this footage. It was collected that very day, and they either didn't fully look through it or didn't think that this was overly suspicious. But everyone else surely did. And soon, this video began making the rounds online, leading to one glaring question being asked. Who is this man? As no one in Johnny's life recognized him. Well, it wouldn't be until May 11th that investigators would finally ID him as Stephen Church. And upon being questioned, he revealed that he had moved to Lynchburg for work, but the opportunity he had lined up fell through shortly after he arrived, leaving him with no money and without a place to stay, which is when he met Johnny, who offered to let him crash on his couch. He supposedly stayed with Johnny for 3 days, and described Johnny as an alcoholic who drank constantly, including on that fateful day. When Johnny arrived home, Stephen claims that he started drunkenly yelling at him about paying rent, which led to the two getting into a verbal altercation. But he insisted that this altercation never turned physical, and that he left immediately after, to which he quickly went back to clean his prints because he was afraid that Johnny would try and have him arrested for squatting. And having already racked up 2 felonies in his life, Stephen was paranoid about going back to jail. But when Stephen was leaving, he did mention seeing Johnny hunched over the toilet as if he were going to vomit, but he claims to have left before this so-called medical emergency started. This is the gist of Stephen's account from that day, but the problem is, it doesn't really match up with what we're hearing in the video. From the footage, we can hear everything going on in that unit, but at no point do we hear any sort of an argument, nor do we hear anything about rent, with the phrases lending themselves more to a physical struggle rather than a verbal one. In fact, the whole time it appears that we're only hearing one voice. But there is an exception. To my knowledge, it's never been conclusively determined whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room. But regardless, this audio makes it clear that Stephen's story was fabricated at least to some degree, as he also fails to account for the loud banging in the background. And because of this, his version of events is generally rejected, with most people seeming to believe one of 2 main theories. The first is that, upon arriving home, Johnny and Stephen had gotten into a physical altercation, resulting in Johnny taking some sort of blow to his abdomen, which in turn triggered or exacerbated this medical emergency. GI bleeds are horrific, and can certainly cause the level of bleeding that was found in the apartment, and perhaps seeing all the blood coming from Johnny, Stephen started yelling at him, before deciding to run off, fearing that he would be charged for murder. This would explain Stephen's demeanor and actions after leaving the apartment, and why he may have fabricated his story, as he knew or knows that he was directly responsible for Johnny's death. And this blow to the abdomen could have easily been missed by investigators, as the injuries would have been primarily internal. The second theory is that upon arriving home, Johnny naturally experienced a medical emergency leading to this catastrophic GI bleed. Upon seeing this and perhaps being in a state of shock, Stephen yelled at him, demanding to know what was happening and telling him to stop, as perhaps he was moving around the apartment and tracking blood everywhere, which would explain the other voice saying, "I can't stop." I could see how this experience would make no sense to Stephen, and perhaps just having no idea what was happening, he left and tried to make it look like he was never there, as he was afraid of being blamed for whatever was happening to Johnny, and so he essentially left Johnny there to die, whether knowingly or unknowingly. What bothers me about this theory is why 911 was never called, not only by Stephen, but by Johnny too, as his phone was found in the unit with blood on it, implying that he had it in his hand at some point, though it's possible that the massive blood loss just made him too disoriented. Both of these theories seem believable, or at least more so than the explanation that Stephen had given. However, in October of 2022, Johnny's case would officially be closed for good, with Stephen being cleared of any wrongdoing, as Johnny's death was labeled the same way that it always has been, a medical emergency that couldn't be further elaborated on. with the most relevant evidence being that Stephen's shoe prints were not found in the blood, but Johnny's were, implying that he had not been part of the struggle. But in my mind, this can be explained by both theories mentioned previously. Though regardless, without the possibility of an autopsy, this is likely where this case ends for good. But with this disturbing footage, I can't help but think that there was more to the story than we may ever know. It was around 7:30 a.m. on a warm July morning back in 2019. 17-year-olds Bethany Martin and a 16-year-old friend decide to walk to a gas station near their home in San Antonio, Texas. And as the two of them made their way down the road, their path brought them parallel to a drainage ditch, which was often filled with various trash and other discarded material. But on this day, something far more interesting caught their eye. It looked like a man crouching down and leaned up against one of the concrete walls. But the closer they got, the more they realized how unusual his posture was. He looked completely unnatural, and he wasn't moving. And by the time they came face to face with him, the reality of the situation would hit them. They had just found a dead body. This discovery was enough to traumatize anyone, especially two teenagers, and upon calling the police and being sent on their way, Bethany and her friend would make the long walk back home contemplating what to do next, before they eventually landed on the idea of sharing their experience with the world. And so, as soon as they got in the door, they began to set up lights and their camera in order to film a TikTok. The clip showed the two sitting on a couch appearing to be in a state of shock, with the words, "Us remembering we found a dead body this morning," plastered on the screen, offering no other context aside from the description, which simply read, "I wish we were kidding, all respect to the family." Some offered sympathy for the girls, while others viewed their post as insensitive and exploitative.
Not yet.
But others weren't even convinced it was real, partially due to this glaring lack of context. Any post's legitimacy would be quickly thwarted by a discovery made not even one full day later, as it was revealed that this recording hadn't actually been the only video that these two girls had made on that fateful day. On their walk to the gas station, the girls had stumbled across the body of 25-year-old Marcus Adams, with the young man having seemingly perished earlier that morning, with it being apparent that he had taken his own life. But upon finding Marcus, the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock, as instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention: his necklace. The girls really liked it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly. And so, before police arrived, the two would once again pull out their phone and start recording, showing Bethany approaching the body with her intention being to grab his necklace, which she eventually does, removing the medallion and giving it to her friend, before tossing the chain into the grass nearby, leading to the girls running away from the scene. The 16-year-old would then post that video onto her Snapchat story, for all of her close friends to see. I can't show the footage for obvious reasons, but it's truly awful. And just based on the audio alone, you can tell that they're very obviously having fun doing this.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god.
There's something so uniquely disturbing about it. It's clear that upon finding the body, there was no real emotional impact on them, at least none that outweighed their desire to steal from it. And as if stealing from this man who had just taken his own life, and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke, wasn't horrible enough, they then immediately posted this other video to TikTok in an attempt to garner sympathy. It's truly awful, and made even more appalling by reports that claim that the 16-year-old had actually worn this medallion in the TikTok video, and in others made following its posting. And unfortunately, their actions had even more upsetting consequences, as the footage from their Snapchat story was quickly downloaded by someone they knew and posted onto an app called Nextdoor, with the footage being totally uncensored. And it was on this app where it's claimed that many of Marcus Adams' own family members would see the footage, many of whom weren't even aware that he was deceased. Just one day after posting this TikTok, both girls were questioned by the police after the incident and the footage was reported to them, and as a result, Bethany would be charged with theft of a human corpse, but would ultimately avoid any serious jail time. Meanwhile, the 16-year-old's name and charges were never publicly released, but we do know that the medallion was returned to the family. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bethany would later come back to her TikTok page shortly after her arrest and share her side of the story, where she gave a less than half-hearted apology, while also claiming to be the victim, saying that her friend had pressured her to steal from Marcus, as well as pressured her into making that TikTok in the first place, because she thought it would be a hit. Though obviously this didn't go over well. On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her home in Greeley, Colorado in the evening hours. Earlier that day, she had sung at a Christmas concert with her school's choir, which her parents were unable to attend, as her mother was out of town and her father had gone to her sister's basketball game nearby, leading to Janelle catching a ride home with a friend, being dropped off at her house sometime around 8:15, where she excitedly spoke to her father on the phone, letting him know that she had arrived home safe and sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway to find the garage door wide open, and the house completely empty. Janelle was gone, leaving behind her winter coat and even her shoes, despite it being a frigid, snowy night. And it was within that snow that was quickly piling up that lie one of the only real clues left behind at the scene. Footprints, leading directly to one of the home's windows, insinuating that someone had been watching Janelle.
12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her Greeley home 1 month ago today. It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping. She has not been seen or heard from since December 20th.
Her disappearance became a big news story almost immediately, with the whole community and really the whole country becoming invested in the fate of this girl, thanks in large part to her being one of the very first milk carton kids, meaning that her face and information about her disappearance was shown on countless milk cartons all across the country to get the word out. And as a result, this case became huge in the mainstream media, as even politicians began to make note of Janelle's story, with then-President Ronald Reagan mentioning the girl in one of his speeches.
I learned about Janelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, 5 days before Christmas. Janelle disappeared from her home.
Though even with this publicity, this didn't necessarily guarantee results, and soon months would turn to years, and eventually to decades. And all the while, Janelle's whereabouts remained a complete mystery. Eventually, the rise of the internet would start to play a key role in this case, where even in the late 2010s, over 3 decades after she had vanished, her case was still being shared and still being discussed, just as it had been 3 decades prior, with it still being a point of contention for politicians, even as recently as 2019. When a man running for governor of Idaho mentioned her disappearance in a Facebook post, 35 full years later. Regardless of Janelle's whereabouts, her case was still very much alive, as the world, and especially Janelle's parents, were haunted by the question, what happened to Janelle Matthews? But sure enough, in late 2019, they would finally get their answer.
Was found in Weld County earlier this week appeared to bring an end to a 3-decade-long search for a missing 12-year-old girl. The Greeley Tribune is reporting they are those of Janelle Matthews.
On Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019, at roughly 4:50 p.m., a crew had been digging in an isolated field in Weld County, Colorado, in order to install a new pipeline, when they would uncover the decayed remains of a little girl. It was Janelle, still wearing those clothes that she had worn to her recital, meaning she had likely died the very day she disappeared, having been killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. Janelle Matthews had been murdered in cold blood, and almost immediately upon finding her body, the police would also zero in on their suspect. The man's name was Stephen Pankey, and at the time of Janelle's disappearance, he had been living in the same general area in Colorado. But by 2019, Stephen had long since fled the area, as after the crime, he would eventually pack up seemingly out of the blue and move to Idaho, where when Janelle's body was discovered, he just so happened to be running for governor. And during his campaign, Pankey had put out a bizarre Facebook post about Janelle, calling for the Colorado DA to oversee a fresh investigation, as he stated that the local police had wrongly been focused on the theory that Janelle's disappearance was a child abduction and murder, which was quite convenient, as just a few months after posting this, he would be arrested for the abduction and murder of Janelle Matthews. Police believe that Janelle had first caught Stephen's eye when he was working as a janitor at the church she attended, with this leading to him stalking her and eventually abducting her on that fateful night, where he threw Janelle in his car and ultimately ended her life, for no reason other than his sick satisfaction. He then proceeded to bury her in a field 20 miles away, in a spot that he was certain no one would ever find her. Now, the evidence supporting this is mainly circumstantial, but it is incredibly concerning. Just one day after Janelle's abduction, Hanky decided to take his wife to California in order to celebrate the holidays with his parents, with this trip being completely unplanned, as his wife was only told of it literally the day of. And making things stranger, when they returned home, Stephen's car conveniently caught fire and was burned to a crisp, to which he offered no explanation for. But in response, he would take the car to a local scrapyard where it would be even further destroyed, taking any potential evidence along with it. But while this is all strange enough, police say that the main indicator that Stephen was their man was his clear obsession with Janelle's case. Shortly after the slaying, Stephen began listening and watching any news reports he could on Janelle's case, while also having his wife read every single article about the missing girl out loud, to which he would often have her repeat them over and over again. But his obsession didn't stop there, as he would then start frequently calling the police, wanting to talk to them about the case, even going as far as to give them potential leads, as he claimed to be fearful that he was going to be blamed for the crime, despite having seemingly never even met her. And it was during some of these many unusual phone calls that he was said to have given details on her disappearance that were never actually made public. His obsession was entirely uncanny, bringing up her disappearance at random even decades later, with his Facebook post being a perfect example. And as it turns out, one of Stephen's most incriminating statements came as a result of something he mentioned in that infamous message. In it, Stephen says that his son Carl had been murdered in 2008, which is in fact true, as the murder was actually fully solved, with it being confirmed that Stephen had nothing to do with it. But when he was mourning the loss of Carl, something unusual happened. His now ex-wife recalled that following Carl's death, Pinky never once cried, until the day before his memorial service, where she watched him from a distance walk up to their son's urn and begin to sob, eventually blurting out, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Janelle Matthews." Despite maintaining his innocence to this day, Pinky was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2040, his conviction coming 12,634 days after Janelle Matthews' disappearance, with Pinky's cryptic Facebook post serving as a dark relic of his twisted obsession that would eventually expose him as Janelle's killer. I want to give a massive shout out to my buddy Ryan, aka Nexpo. A lot of you already know this, but Ryan is a really good friend of mine, and I'm super proud of him because he just released his very own podcast called Late Nights with Nexpo. Ryan's all about immersive and atmospheric storytelling, covering dark and bizarre mysteries and rabbit holes, which obviously we all know. And this podcast really captures his style so well, as it's basically like a Nexpo video, just in audio. And he's releasing episodes every single week, which makes up for his abysmal upload schedule. Okay, I guess I'm not really lying. It's really good though, and it's exclusive content on top of what he's already made. And if you like my channel, and if you like the Nexpo channel, then you will definitely love this podcast. So check out Late Nights with Nexpo wherever you get your podcasts, and be on the lookout for new episodes every single Wednesday. And as always, thank you so much for watching.